Hi, we're here with Mayor Dan Pope on behalf of what the Chamber is supporting on the May 5th proposition as far as doing away with the Auditorium Coliseum. And Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being here today. I know our Chamber members are going to be very appreciative of you answering some questions today.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. And give us a little background, if you would, about the Auditorium Coliseum and essentially where we find ourselves today leading up to this election. Where have we been?
Well, the legislation that gave the city the land to build the Auditorium and Coliseum was passed by the state legislature in the 40s. The facilities were built in the 50s. In the 60s, there was a provision added to the city charter that requires a vote of the citizens to abandon. So the language around abandon is why do people why are you using that? Well, that's the language.
It's in the charter.
That's right. It's in the charter, and so that's where that came from. Our council voted 7-0 earlier this year to put this on the ballot in May. We don't have the ability to sell this to the highest bidder. There's a reversionary clause in that legislation. In other words, this land belonged to Texas Tech. It was given to us by the legislature. When we abandon it, it goes back to Texas Tech. I think one of the real positives in a potential vote for this is that if in fact we do vote positively and it goes back to Texas Tech, they're willing to pay to do the demolition. And they have plans for the land other than just a parking lot.
Sure, and I think that's you know, we're taught to start with that end product in mind, and I can't help but appreciate where you and the council were in making these decisions, because I think in and of itself, knowing what the cost to keep it open on a year-to-year basis, and then obviously with the commitment by Texas Tech, I think that's a good end result. But before we get to that end result, over the last several years, we know that this has been a money drain to the citizens of Lubbock and the taxpayers. And explain to us about last year, the approximately $600,000 is what it cost to keep that open. What does those costs represent?
Yeah, so if you go back 10 years, the cost is our annual loss is much closer to $700,000 on average. This year it's a little less than $600,000 because we've tried to take some cost out. But if you were to put those costs in groups, there'd be three big groups. Utilities is, I think, the largest piece, over $200,000 a year to heat and cool. People cost and what's related to that. So it's full-time employees as well as part-time employees that help us for events. Things that are not, certainly some of that's reimbursed by the folks that rent it, but the vast majority of it's not. And then finally, insurance. I think that those costs alone make up at least 80% of the overall cost of operating the Auditorium and Coliseum, which this year I believe the estimated loss on the Coliseum, Auditorium and Coliseum numbers, $593,000.
And we know that obviously to really bring it up to code and really to pay for renovations and repair and rehabilitation, if you will, of the facility is going to be a lot more money than obviously I think some of us would be willing to support paying as far as fixing it. But nonetheless, those costs obviously are something that we would also save by not repairing it and then giving it back to Tech. Then we would also save the cost of demolishing it because they would cover that cost as well, you said.
That's right.
And I think that's really good news. Well, then, having said those things as a background, it seems to me pretty logical on what we should do on May 5th. So why do we want citizens to understand why this is important on May 5th to go and vote for this proposition?
Well, I think the Auditorium and Coliseum have served us well. I want to start by saying there's a lot of great memories related to that. But I do think it's time to move forward with the United Supermarkets Arena, which we've enjoyed now for a decade, with Buddy Holly Hall out of the ground and getting more and more real every day. I think now is the time to make that bold step. We've got to, there's other work to do. We've got to work with partners, with the county, with Texas Tech, with the rodeo folks, with the county livestock show folks, hopefully, to find a replacement venue for the dirt events, and we're working on that. I think it's important that we don't lead anybody to believe that that's not important to us. But I do think that as a community, we need to move forward, and I think this is one of those steps that will allow us to do that.
And that's why the chamber has supported this, from our business member perspective. We've heard enough through the Imagine Lubbock Together process about the vision and the strategic planning going forward with our community, and I think on behalf of the chamber, I think it's something that we can really stand a lot to gain by supporting this particular effort. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being here to helping us explain this. Anything else you'd like to close with?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the chamber. I want to thank your not you as much as your membership.
Yeah, we understand that.
But I'm thankful for your membership. I'm thankful for the fact that what they do for Lubbock every day. The heartbeat of Lubbock is the business community, and they create the jobs. They do the hard work, the heavy lifting, and so if I don't want to miss an opportunity to say thank you to them.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And of course, we always know that any chamber members that are watching this video or anybody else that has any questions, that please reach out to us. We'll be glad to explain our position why we support on May 5th supporting this proposition.